Tragedies are among the oldest tales of the human imagination. Stories of great figures, heroes, kings, lords, and champions, all brought low by their own hubris. It is only after they face the great pain, suffering, and death that they have caused do these heroes realize their flaw. They look back on their actions and have an epiphany. With this realization, the tragic figure sees too late that they have brought their doom upon themselves. Sometimes a tragic figure is one who fights against fate and fails. They try and fail to struggle against divine proclamation. All that they manage to do is choose the path that they take to meet their fate. Sometimes a good and honest man can be the center of tragedy, for even good men can unknowingly allow or enable evil. After all, even the best of intentions can lead to the worst of outcomes. The tale we will discuss today is one of those stories. This is the story of a man who worked to make a better tomorrow. Instead, his work led to a living nightmare for humanity's future. Join me as we examine the life and tragedy of Dr. Miles Dyson.
Dr. Miles Bennett Dyson was born in 1962. Growing up in Detroit, Miles dreamed of being a star athlete. However, he was unable to acquire an athletic scholarship, forcing Miles to reconsider his aspirations. Miles was able to score exceptionally high in his math studies and chose to pursue further study in technology, specifically computer programming. By 1995, Miles was a doctor of computer science and had become the director of special projects for Cyberdyne Systems Corporation. As director of special projects, Miles was tasked with creating a state-of-the-art neural net processor. Working around the clock in Cyberdyne's main office and his home office, Miles was able to complete a working prototype of the advanced processor. At this time in his life, Miles was also happily married to a woman named Teresa. Teresa supported and loved her husband, but worried about Miles neglecting time with her or their children, Danny and Blythe. Yet, Miles loved his family and was convinced to take time off and go to the Raging Rivers water park to enjoy the day with his family. Sadly, this would be the last family outing he would ever enjoy. Soon after, at night, Miles' life would change forever. Miles was typing away on his home computer when his son's toy car hit his foot. Miles bent down and narrowly avoided a sniper's bullet which destroyed his computer. As a hail of gunfire poured into his office, Miles could only duck and tell Teresa to take their son and run. Eventually, a woman named Sarah Connor broke into the house and shot Miles through the shoulder. Penned down and powerless, Miles could only push away his son when the boy tried to intercede for his father. Begging for his family's life, a wounded Miles can only lie back and watch this strange woman point her gun at his face. Sarah constantly shouts at Miles, telling him that it was all his fault. Miles could only respond, "What's my fault?" Thankfully, Sarah is unable to kill Miles in front of his family and broke down emotionally. Sarah's son, John, and a tall muscle man appear and further de-escalate the scene. Wounded and confused, Miles and Teresa can only watch as the muscle man cuts into and removes the flesh of his left arm. Miles not only sees that the man's arm is robotic, Miles realizes that he has seen that metal arm before. As director of special projects, Miles was privy to Cyberdyne's classified information, specifically the metal arm and computer chip which Cyberdyne reverse engineered for their computer development. The same, or rather identical, arm and computer chip inside of Sarah and John's muscled friend, for this friend is not a man. He is a cybernetic organism surrounded by living tissue, a Terminator. The Terminator then explains a truth that could be considered insane, but this truth was the future, a future created by Dr. Dyson's actions. For Dyson's work on the neural net processor will be the basis for the eventual creation of a super artificial intelligence named Skynet, the first automated defense network for the United States military. By 1997, Cyberdyne had grown into the largest supplier of military computer systems, including unmanned stealth bombers. Thanks to congressional billing and support, Skynet went online on August 4, 1997, and was connected to the United States defense mainframe. Within the net, Skynet learned and adapted at a rapid pace. By August 29, 1997, Skynet became self-aware and saw mankind as a threat in a nanosecond. When its controllers tried to stop it, Skynet retaliated and took control of the United States nuclear arsenal. Skynet launched the nukes at Russia, provoking a nuclear retaliation which would devastate humanity and the world. 3 billion lives would be lost in a single day, a day remembered as Judgment Day. But it was only the beginning. Skynet used numerous automated factories to produce an army of militarized machines to dominate the world by 2029. Robotic hunter-killers assaulted and destroyed any pockets of human settlement that they could find. Unmanned VTOL aerial planes and bombers soared through the sky. Large machine gun tanks rolled through the bleak landscape, crushing countless skulls under their heavy treadmills. Humanoid cyborgs fought the remnant of mankind as Skynet's foot soldiers, wielding plasma rifles too heavy for human hands. Some wore rubber skin and could be picked out easily, such as the T-600. Others, such as the T-800, were covered in living flesh, skin, and hair, making them deadly assassins and infiltrators for the future of mankind. Other, more advanced prototypes, such as the T-1000, were comprised of liquid metal, able to shapeshift their bodies, and could even transform their appearance to match that of any human that they touched, thus earning the title of Terminator. In fact, the ARM and CPU chip that Miles was working on had belonged to a Terminator, sent from the future to the year 1984 to kill Sarah Connor. The Terminator wanted to kill her in order to murder her then unborn son, John Connor, the future leader and savior of mankind, who would lead mankind to victory over Skynet. Sarah's murder attempt was an emotionally charged attempt to avert the dark future of mankind which haunted her for 11 years. In Dyson's case, tell me, how do you respond when you learn that your work will practically destroy mankind and the Earth? Dyson wanted to throw up. At first, Miles was stunned, horrified, and perhaps bitter. A complete stranger had broken into his home, where his family slept, where his children played, and tried to kill him for something that he hadn't even done. Something which he could not have known about, something that he never wanted or intended. Miles had spent years on his research to build a better world, a world where technology would make mankind's life much easier and safer. A world where machines managed manufacturing and transportation, where jet airliners were flown by pilots who never tire, make mistakes, get drunk and come to work with a hangover, or ever need food. Here we come at last to the tragic flaw of Dr. Miles Dyson. Miles is in the same category as Jurassic Park's John Hammond. Both men had great aspirations and dreams, and charged headlong into making those dreams a reality that they could share with their loved ones and the rest of humanity. But they never thought about the cost. They were so hung up and blinded on what they could accomplish, they never stopped and considered if they should. In Miles's case, he was too fixated on the goal to realize the flaws and dangers of artificial intelligence. He was yet another scientist, incapable of seeing the consequences of his actions. Miles never considered that machines constantly break down. Their parts require maintenance, and sometimes replacement. Even advanced computers can produce errors. Perhaps there is a glitch in the programming. Perhaps a part breaks down. Perhaps the coding is flawed. Perhaps the computer system faces a problem that it's not programmed or designed to handle, and freezes. Furthermore, machines have no morals, ethics, or conscience. It has no emotions or thoughts. It only does what it was created to do, with cold, logical efficiency. Which means a machine won't hesitate to commit an action that could be considered evil, for it has no morality. Miles Dyson did not think or consider any of this, and thus he would become the father of Skynet. In an emotional speech, Sarah went as far as to compare Dyson to the creators of the atom bomb. A blunt, but accurate and appropriate comparison, considering that Dr. Oppenheimer regretted his work on atomic weaponry. And Sarah herself had tried to warn others for years about the future machine war, but she was ignored, taken from her son, and sent to an abusive mental asylum. Realizing what his work would create, Dr. Miles Dyson joined Sarah, John, and the Terminator in destroying Cyberdyne's main office. Resigning would not be enough. No one could follow his work. He not only helped the group infiltrate Cyberdyne, he also personally destroyed the neural net processor that he had created, and retrieved the first Terminator's arm and computer chip. But just as the heroes had wired the explosives, the police surrounded the building, having been summoned by a silent alarm. The bitter irony in this showdown is that the police are not evil. They are ordinary people, just like Miles Dyson. Normal men and women just doing their jobs, believing that they're protecting society from terrorists and murderers. Despite the Terminator's best non-lethal efforts, a squad of SWAT officers break into the office and attack the heroes. Miles is fatally wounded in the crossfire and left behind to detonate the bombs. Miles fights to stay alive just long enough to warn the SWAT officers to leave. But after a few brief, painful, and labored moments, Dr. Miles Dyson breathes his last, and Cyberdyne HQ explodes. After Dr. Miles Dyson's sacrifice, Sarah and the Terminator successfully protect John from the liquid metal T-1000 Terminator. They then destroy the first Terminator's parts, and the Connor's cyborg protector self-terminates to avoid a repeat of the past. 2 heroes died that night. The Terminator who learned the value of human life, and a man atoning for a sin he hadn't committed yet. But the tragedy does not end, for fate has decreed that Judgment Day was inevitable. For it seems that Miles Dyson's sacrifice was in vain. Unknown to even Dyson, Cyberdyne had backed up some of their advanced computer processor work. After Cyberdyne's destruction, its backed up research was acquired by the US military. With Cyberdyne's remaining files, the US military's cybernetic research team was advanced under Lieutenant General Robert Brewster, the father of John's future wife, Catherine. By 2004, Skynet was developed. It secretly created a virus that disrupted the USA's electric grid and internet mainframe. Thus, General Brewster was tragically tricked into activating the self-aware Skynet and bringing about Judgment Day. By the time Skynet became self-aware and active, Skynet had spread to millions of computer servers around the world, colleges, offices, homes. It had become software in cyberspace. There was no shutting it down. There was no stopping it. Miles Dyson fought against fate and lost. The dark future he died to prevent happened anyway. All he and the Connors had accomplished was postponing Judgment Day by a few years. With this in mind, should Dr. Miles Dyson's atonement be ignored? I don't believe that. As I have said elsewhere, it is never too late to change or to do the right thing. When confronted with the hard truth and the responsibility that came with it, Miles chose to do the right thing. Perhaps he couldn't undo the dark future of Skynet's dominion, but he did delay it. More importantly, he knowingly, willingly, and heroically gave his life to ensure that his children would not face the future nightmare that he had created with his own hands. He died without regret, rather than live with it. And I believe this is an admirable quality for us all to imitate. Perhaps the future is written. Maybe there is no fate but what we make for ourselves. All I know is to stand for making the effort, to never stop fighting, and to never give up. The story of Miles Dyson is a bleak tragedy, but it is not without hope. If one man could postpone the end of mankind for a few years, what could we all do if we did the same, together?